Welcome back to the Reformark Media Show. Today we've got a special guest in the studio. We've actually got two special guests in the studio, two new faces. We are joined by Melissa Rescott and the semi-famous Tilly Dillehay. The books are starting to blow up. We're all reading one actually right now. I'm reading Broken Bread, and I think it's hilarious when you write something specifically to the women reading it. And I'm like, wow, I'm not one of those men. And my wife reading Seeing Green, and you're reading
I just finished my Dear Hemlock, and now I'm doing Seeing Green.
yeah, and my wife's reading Dear Hemlock, actually. All right, today we are joined by Tilly Dillehay, an author, speaker, and co-host of the Homefires podcast. Tilly is known for her thoughtful, gospel-centered writing on everyday faith and the heart struggles that often go unseen. She's the author of Seeing Green, Don't Let Envy Color Your Joy, Broken Bread, How to Stop Using Food and Fear to Fill Spiritual Hunger, and her newest book, My Dear Hemlock, a creative and convicting exploration of spiritual warfare written in the spirit of C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters. She lives in Hartsville, Tennessee, where her husband, Justin, serves as a pastor. Together, they're raising 4 children, homeschooling, and serving their local church community. Through her books, Articles for Desiring God, and the Gospel Coalition, and her podcast with Abigail Dodds, Tilly continues to encourage women to pursue holiness, gratitude, and joy in Christ. Tilly, have you heard of Pregnancy Center of Hartsville?
Yeah.
So we do the marketing. Our company does all the marketing for them. That's the
Really?
connection that I was talking about.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah,
So
no, people in our church started the pregnancy center in Hartsville.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it
Amazing.
was, I guess it might have been as much as 15 years. It's been at least 10 years since
Wow.
they started it. But now it's a community effort. I mean, there are multiple churches now
yeah,
involved with it. I think my husband's on the board right now.
Wow.
Other
no way.
members
Did you talk to him?
have always been
Was
on the board.
there might be a crazy connection here, an even crazier
Yeah, I mean, there's
connection
not
here.
that many people on the board over there, but you might have talked to Drew, who's another local pastor.
That's who I think I talked to. Okay, I
Yes.
was gonna say, did I meet Justin before I knew it was him?
Yeah, no.
That's
No,
Really
you
crazy.
probably talked to Drew because I know he was the president until pretty recently. They just switched out the president. But yeah, that was started it was really spearheaded by Russell and Amy Terrell. They're deacons at our church. They also are partners with us in our coffee shop that we own here in Hartsville.
Nice.
So yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, it was
So
a good work
the
they did.
deeper connection there is the pastor's wife who introduced Melissa and my wife to you and your writings and your podcasts and different things like that. About a little over a year ago was when he was coming to the church. He had applied at 2 churches. And I'm in this meeting with the Hartsville board. And some reason we're Reformed. So we get in a conversation with the pastor there about different things. And I'm like, we're really excited because our church is actually working on reforming. And we have a pastor coming from Midwestern who's finishing his PhD under Matthew Barrett. And I explained all this stuff to him. And he goes, tell Lance I said, hey. And I was like, what? How do you know him? And he was like, we're the other church he applied at. So he had taken our job. And then, so the connection was cool because I started talking to Lance about that the other day. And he was like, yeah, I knew I would be like right up the road from Tilly. And and then Justin, if I took that job, but it was a music position and he's not a music guy. So
Ah, okay.
that's the whole story
Wow.
there.
So
It's a small
that
world.
was
So
like
small.
Drew's church. That is so interesting. So you guys are now he's instead of small town Hartsville, he gets to be
He's
small
small,
town
yeah.
Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, we're working on, our church is going through, and we'll get to this a little bit as I ask questions. We had a split recently because our pastors are all Reformed. I lead the youth ministry. I'm in the pastoral residency program and the children's ministry as well. And we're all Reformed. I think it's just part of the lay of our generation with everything that we've been taught and honestly seen on media for the most part. And so our town hadn't really probably even heard of Reformed theology apart
Yep.
from that because it didn't exist in it.
Yep.
And so Piper was obviously a huge part of that for our generation. And so we started to study, we came to our convictions, and our lead pastor went to Southern. So there was that as well. And as we started to actually lead with those convictions, what happened was what happens at any church when you do that. And we had a split because of a popular teacher in the church who was a deacon, but was basically serving as a pastor in the capacity that he was doing. And so in the process of all of that, we find ourselves getting to interview people who quite often have been through similar situations of the exact same thing.
That's good.
We're not that far from 9 Marks. We interview Jonathan Lehman, and we were driving up to DC in like a month to interview Jonathan Lehman. So there's a lot of good resources, but the Valley has not. They don't even know what 90% of the stuff is. They may have heard of 10% of it because of people that go and do convocation at Liberty, but they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of them, but they don't know anything about them.
Right.
So, with that background going into the conversation, tell us a little bit about your background and your life growing up in Tennessee. What was your upbringing like?
Yeah, so I was raised in a Christian home. I was one of 7 kids who were homeschooled. My dad was in Christian music. He was actually like a CCM artist, and then later on a producer, and he did a lot of different things actually. But we also would buy houses and move into them and renovate them, and then
Mm.
move out of them a few years later. So there was a lot of moving when I was a kid, which didn't affect my school life because I was homeschooled, but it did affect our church life on some level
Yeah.
because we did change churches more than the average person probably.
Mm.
Um, and my dad kind of got moved into Reformed theology when I was pretty young, so that's what I
Wow.
remember coming up into.
Nice.
But one of those churches that we moved out here to the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, because mostly I was raised in the Nashville area. But we got a farm when I was like 6 years old and lived out here for 2 years and went to this little church in Hartsville, Grace Baptist Church. This one guy had kind of kept it alive when the town was dying, and they had become reformed through, I think, R.C. Sproul. And it was definitely the only, like, Reformed Baptist church within many I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
many there were, but it was a
Mhm.
pretty rare thing. So that was the church that I remembered the most fondly. It was small. We ate a meal together every single week, and we
Mm.
continue to keep up relationships with the people out here even when I was back in Nashville. So fast forward, 15 years, I'm a young college graduate who is dealing with eating disorders and
Mhm.
has become an agnostic, like completely walked away from the faith and dating this crazy artsy boyfriend, and my parents are like, hey, you're obviously miserable. We have already called this pastor from that church out in small town Hartsville because he's become a biblical counselor. He's been trained in something called biblical counseling, and he's invited you to come stay with his family. He also has 7 kids. Come stay with his family for 2 weeks and just argue about the faith and counsel with
Wow.
him and his wife. So they
Wow.
open their home to me. I'm 22, I think, and I show up out here and just am in the counseling room with him. And at the end of 2 weeks out here, just seeing his family, just being functional, and nothing is cool about this church. I've been in these big Nashville cool churches, and
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
isn't like that, but it's just
Yep.
quiet faithfulness in this little town, and him also kind of working through some of the issues I had. And I say at the end of 2 weeks, I'm like, okay, I'm a Christian. So I end up moving out here, without a job, and people in the church hosted me. I lived with families in the
Wow.
church for a while, because I didn't have anywhere else to go, and continue to kind of counsel and just be part of the church and be discipled. And I also met Justin in those early. I did not like him much, and he didn't like me much, but
Yes.
he was a pastoral intern at the time in the church. So he started like writing emails to me, answering theological questions that I
Oh,
had, and
nice.
that turned into kind of a friendship. And
That's
um,
awesome. That's what I am now, in the ordination process in phase
right,
4. So my
yeah.
wife is super excited because phase 4 is where we both get interviewed. And,
Oh,
but we're good friends with everybody that'll be interviewing us. But she's like,
yeah.
oh, Al, I have some skin in the game now. I have to answer the theological questions too.
I
Oh, yeah.
love that story because it just shows your heart, your parents, the relationship you have with your parents, that you as a 20-something adult, like, okay, I'm gonna go to this town.
Yeah.
I think that just speaks to your relationship with them and your character too. I don't know like a
Yeah.
20-something that's like edgy, like going through all that, being like, yeah, I'm going to submit and I'm going to go and
Yeah,
live
I
with the
do think
pastor and his family.
there was definitely an element of like, I tried all this other stuff and it is not working out. Like, I am
Mm.
miserable, you know.
Yeah.
Fine, sure,
Yeah.
I'll go, you know. But it does speak. I do think like my relationship with my dad, especially just from childhood, I care so much what he says and what he thinks
Wow.
Mm,
to this day.
Mm.
You know, I can't lose. I could
mm.
never lose that. And that, yeah, he that was the kind of relationship that he built with us. But I put them through a lot, you know. And yeah, and then even coming out here, I mean, when we got married, when we started dating, it was like just so close to missionary dating on Justin's part. And there were definitely several points when he had to just be like, look, you got to straighten up. You know, if you want to
Mhm.
walk forward with this, we're going to have to straighten up. But so your experience though, of being in this small town where Reformed theology is unheard of, like Justin's story is so amazing because he grew up in this town nearby called Defeated. Um, and so
Wow.
he played basketball for the Defeated elementary basketball
Oh my
team,
gosh.
which is character building.
Yeah.
Um, and he grew up in the same house his entire life, never moved. It's Dillehay Hollow
Mhm.
Lane that he grew up on. And he was in these small churches as a like huge theology geek from a young age
Mhm.
when no one else in his town was. Like nobody was like
Mm.
that. But he
Oh,
just
praise God.
had this appetite, you know, and he ended up as a seriously not reformed, you know, with an opinion, not reformed young man found John Piper and started listening to thousands and thousands of hours of John Piper sermons and
Mhm.
became reformed that way. And I know that's a lot
Wow.
of people, that's their
Yep.
story. Yep.
That's my husband's and my story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Piper's the gateway drug, that's what they say,
Right.
to especially our generation. He was for a generation that was starving for something real, that came out of a movement that was all about church growth programs and, like, how do we get as many people in the building as possible. He just wasn't afraid to talk about anything
Yeah.
and he would be so real. Like, there was nowhere else you could go where you'd just be like, "What does the Bible say about you name it?" And there's an Ask Pastor John on it that you're listening
Mhm.
to, and then you can also go through a sermon that is literally a series that's literally titled Tulip. Like, not
Right.
many Baptists were brave enough to
Uh-huh.
go through
Yeah,
he
and
embodied.
at this time, I think he had to get, like, hard copies of tapes or something. I don't know how, or
Yeah.
maybe he was just getting to be able to download stuff and burn it onto a CD or something, but yeah, the, the I guess the culture that he was part of was also very anti-intellectual, so
Uh-huh.
he also went to Southern Seminary, but just the idea of someone who's treating Scripture as carefully as Piper does, and also engaging with the opposing viewpoint in a fair and reasonable way. You know,
Mhm.
this was something. Oops, sorry. This is something that he had never seen, certainly in his churches. You know,
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
Our
But
culture is
yeah,
the same. It's like if you
mhm.
have any amount of intellectualism, the verse you'll hear often quoted is knowledge puffs up. They'll say,
Right,
knowledge
right,
puffs up.
right.
And
Yep.
then we say, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and
Yeah.
mind.
In your mind. Mhm. Yeah.
So did he revitalize the area? Did
He ended
Justin,
up
was he
having to
part of that?
leave. Yeah, he left the churches that he was in before and ended up coming to Grace Baptist Church.
Mm,
And then but I tell you what else we're hearing now a lot. We're getting a lot of some kind of refugees from these churches nearby that have
Yeah.
um, always been very resistant to Reformed theology. But we're also getting like a local pastor of like a Church of Christ church, like one of these little
Oh, wow.
Church of Christ churches who's secretly reformed, you know, and like going at it
He's a
from the
closet
inside.
reform.
Yeah. Or yeah, and then a lot of this kind of the story of, like, the young pastor who is reformed and is just kinda slowly revitalizing, so
Yeah.
it's definitely real
Yeah.
what's happening, and, my
For
husband
sure.
especially is seeing, like, the kinds of churches he grew up in even having this hunger that's kinda
Yeah.
waking
Mhm.
up in those churches in this area, so, yeah, it's
Yes.
exciting.
Have you seen what was that YouTube video we all just watched?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Have you seen the American Gospel with,
Yes.
Sean and
That just
Yes.
so spoke to that story of, like, seeing you, I grew up in that,
Mhm.
and then the hunger that comes from it has to be deeper than this.
Mhm.
It cannot just be all that's offered because it's not working.
Mhm.
And Reformed theology, just it was a relief.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
a very bright light for us because we're in the city of Stanton now. Our city has 25,000 people, so it's not a big city.
Yeah.
But we have one PCA church in our city, one in the neighboring city of Waynesboro, and then one Todd Pruitt's is in Harrisonburg. That's a big piece. He's got the podcast with he's got a popular podcast. He went to Midwestern. He's popular because now he's partially because he was Baptist, now he's Presbyterian. But all of those churches, I spoke with a pastor yesterday of one of them who was like, yeah, like probably 40% of our church are Baptists waiting for a church like you guys. Like they're waiting to know you're there and they're a part of our church because they haven't found one yet.
Right.
And so that was encouraging. And we kind of knew that as well, because that's what came out of being a Presbyterian. Valerie grew up at the same church Todd Pruitt's at now, which is my wife. And so we know that that's there, but we also have to, coming out of a split, make sure our roots are good before we're going
Right.
out and trying
Right.
to bring more
Yeah.
people in. So that's what we're doing right now. Tilly, can you pray for us? We're about halfway in.
That was the prelude. Yes, I'd love to pray. Father, thank you so much for the gift of brothers and sisters in Christ from different places that I've never even heard of, and all around the world. Just that you are knitting us all together from afar, and someday we all will be reunited and enjoy fellowship in the new heavens and the new earth. And I pray that you would prepare us for that day and give us the work that you have for us to do in the meantime, and bless this conversation. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. So you and Abigail Dodds have a Homefires podcast, and I know several women that love that show.
Okay.
I didn't even know, but I posted it on our Facebook and was like, does anybody have any questions for Tilly? I think I tagged you in it. And one of our pastor's wives that we didn't even know knew who you were commented and was like, my daughter and I love the Homefires podcast. You should talk to her and see if she's got any questions. I was like, well, that's really cool. You see how God's reforming, like working within the church. The two of you met at a conference. Is that right?
Well, technically, we did. We did see each other once at TGC, like in a writer's breakfast, but we didn't even talk, I don't think, there. So
Mm,
that wasn't really the birth of a friendship. I reached out to her sight unseen because my husband was familiar with her work on
mm,
social media, like on Twitter, I think, and
mhm,
just this was around 2020, and she already had this pretty strong just voice. Like she had a mission for sure on the way that she was using both Twitter and Instagram, to just be a solid conservative female voice,
mhm.
and I think I bought her book based on that and read Atypical Woman, and just I was looking for someone who's going to be a good balance with me to start this podcast idea that I had of Homefires. Um, and when I reached out to her, I think she had heard of maybe of seeing my only book out at that time was Seeing Green, because she endorsed my second one, which was about to come out. But she had, I think, heard about that book from her friend Joe Rigney, who
Mhm.
was kind about that book. So I think she had a little bit of a reason to trust me, and I had my husband saying, "I think you can trust her,"
Yeah.
um, and it was just literally, "Hey, let's start a podcast." We had one conversation with each other, I think, and then we just went ahead and hit record and and kind of got to know each other on the podcast. So, yeah, I'm sure it was awkward. I haven't gone back and listened to early episodes to see how awkward it was, but I think within that first, and we just did it in seasons for several
Mhm.
years. We would just say, "Well, we probably won't do this again. We'll do 15
Right.
episodes right now. We probably won't do it again
Yeah.
next year." And then we would, or one of us would. I think one year she did it, and I backed out. She did it with a good friend of hers, um, Jenny Naselli. But I
Mhm.
think basically it's just been an as life has allowed
Right.
extra ministry for us that has also been this extra benefit of just friendship. So we've enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Joe Rigney's been on every season, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. He
And,
has.
we're interviewing him next week too. Actually, I
Okay.
think I have Sean and Joe next week.
That's funny.
And, who did you say she did the last one of the seasons
Yeah,
with? She
Andy
wrote the
Naselli's
technology.
wife, and Andy is a writer and
Mm.
he teaches at Bethlehem Seminary actually, but his wife
Yeah.
lives like 5 minutes around the corner from the Dodds family, so they're really good friends, and she jumped on to be part of last season, I think. Jenny Naselli is her
Okay.
name. Yeah.
Did he write I either know him from being at Bethlehem or he wrote a book that went really popular on technology or something like that? Or am I
Yeah,
wrong about that?
he wrote a book recently on how to read a book,
Oh, Andy
like
Naselli,
reading.
yeah, because
Yeah.
Canon put out the awesome
Yeah.
preview for it that it was like, how do
Yeah.
you make such a good preview for how to read a book? Like
Yeah, right.
that
Yeah,
was
that's right. It was
awesome.
a really great video preview. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Andy's great. I mean, we had him on the I'd like to get him back on the podcast actually this year sometime. He just has a really he also came out of a very different background from where he is
Mhm.
now, like a very fundamentalist background. So he has this book that he wrote with someone else on the conscience that I still am just shaped by because it's just about the idea that your conscience is tuned further and further as you learn more.
Mhm.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
So
cool. A friend of mine once described you as a Piperite, which in our circles, of course, you already know is a big compliment. And you've written For Desiring God. What kind of influence has he had specifically on your life? Because you're in Tennessee. He's in Minnesota, right?
yeah, pretty far
Okay,
away.
so yeah. So
Yeah.
what kind of impact has he had on your life?
Yeah, well, honestly, the biggest impact he's had on my life is that if it weren't for him, I would not be married to my husband and I would not be living probably in Hartsville in this church. So nothing about my life would be the same
But
because of his impact on Justin mainly. And Justin, of course, has shaped me. I mean, I learn and am changed all the time just by being married to Justin. Um, so he shapes my thinking a lot, and a lot of his thinking, many, many more hours and a lot more reading of Piper on his part than mine. But I've probably
Mhm.
read 3 of Piper's books, so that's not a lot, you know.
Mm-mm.
But you know, I've loved them. So I
Mhm.
do think the shaping is there, but a lot of it has been kind of indirect for me.
Yeah.
So
I really enjoy listening. You have your different people, and this is actually like a question that's often asked. If you had one person you could listen to for the rest of your life, who would you listen to? If you had
yeah,
one person you could read for the rest of your life,
yeah.
I would listen to Piper if I could listen to someone for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
I've read a few of his books as well, and I love his writing. I think you get a lot out of one, and they're very
Right.
similar. So,
They
like,
are
if you
very
read the
similar. Yeah.
others,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah,
And,
that's right.
so I've read some of his best, like, books that have impacted my life tremendously, but I would like to listen to him for the rest of my life if I could listen to him. And, he's just so passionate in how he speaks as well, which in reform circles, we're pretty used to not having that. So there's a difference there with he and Bodie, who's gone
Mhm.
to be with the Lord. But I really appreciate listening to the two of those guys, and
Mm.
also have to be careful because I know that your emotions, this is the whole Jonathan Edwards thing. You don't want to be led by your emotions, but fortunately, both of those two are very faithful. And so what they're saying is
Actually
coming
true.
from their passion, and it's true, and it's their
Mhm.
love of the scripture.
Yeah.
One huge struggle I've noticed in the Shenandoah Valley is we do not, and this might be everywhere, I don't know. We do not have a Titus 2 model in any church I've
Mhm.
ever been in. I've
No.
never seen the older women that's discipling the younger women, and I've heard it from our good friends that are starving for it.
Hmm.
How do you, in an area that lacks such a culture, start to implement it? Do you have any tips for that? Have you seen that change in a church you've been in before?
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen it change in a church I've been in before because our culture here was set before I got here, you know. Um, But I'll tell you what we do at our church that has been such a blessing to me, and it is that one of the other pastor's wives who has been here for 30 plus years, she's the lady that I stayed with when I came out here. It's her family, but she has been hosting a once a month Titus. She calls it Titus 2, and people come to her house for tea, and she just it's just practical application of loving husbands, caring for children, caring for the home. Like it is pure, wife and mother calling type of material that she's talking about. And she uses a book, but she also will tap the older women to do part of the study, like to just here's a book, like lead this chapter on this month of Titus 2. And she'll also have another woman who's not leading the book, um, to do a practical tip, like something that works in your home or bookkeeping or whatever, just like something really practical like that. So I like that because it is very, and then people get connected. You assign groups of 3 who are going to be little prayer partners for the month, which sometimes goes well and sometimes doesn't go well if you just don't make the time.
Don't
But
do
so that's one thing. Like that little tradition once a month has been a really big deal. Like in those years when I had toddlers
Mhm.
at home and I was just rolling into Titus 2 exhausted, just so happy to have a Saturday morning for a couple hours
Mhm.
conversation with adult women about what I was trying to do, was really helpful. And the other thing that has been in place since I've been around is a Wednesday night prayer meeting, and this is men and
Mhm.
women, but the men and women actually split by
Yeah.
gender. After the big group gives prayer requests, we split up, and the women are give more prayer requests in amongst just the women, and
Right.
then split into groups of 3 and pray together.
Mhm.
So this is every Wednesday night for decades. And
Mm.
I don't know how it would be possible to overestimate the impact of that in my life through the years, but just in the life of the church, that how we know each other and how the prayer is effectual and you can see it. And it's just culture building, but
Yeah.
it's
Takes
also
time.
like for me as a young woman joining the church and you heard this, the conditions of just broke, like a wounded bird that I was when I came in. I didn't know how to
Mhm.
pray in front of people. I was scared. I hated going on Wednesday nights, but it was the way that I learned from other women. This is how you pray. Like this is a basic part of the Christian life, and this is how you do it, just by being there.
Then
So that
yeah.
yeah, and then there's a lot of, like, we still do the potluck every Sunday, and there's still a few ladies in the church who will do meals for some event that we're hosting and there's still the ministry of bringing meals to people who have a baby or who
Mhm.
are sick. So the
Good.
ministries that the women kind of handle in the church are very like shoulder to shoulder types of ministries. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there are people who come in, and I was one of these who came in and was like, oh my goodness, bring a meal to someone. Like, how do you do
Mhm.
that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just have to learn by doing it because you don't know how to do it. So,
Yeah. I'm
um,
really encouraged by hearing all this because our church is doing this, right? Like,
Yeah.
uh,
but
yeah.
there's not like a so I lead a once a month discussion
Hmm.
but it's all we're in the same exact season. There is not the
Hmm.
intergeneration. And that's the thing that
Yeah.
we're seeing is that we actually have been building community. Our pastor just started the Sunday night prayer.
Yeah.
It's, we're joining, we split off into men and women and we're
Mhm.
doing that. And that I was able to go to one. I have very small children. I was
Right.
able to go to one and it was so fulfilling. And it was just coming off of one of your podcast episodes where you were like, this is what we do. And I was like, whoa, I'm doing it.
Mm.
And it was so fulfilling. And then we do the once a month mom together and breaking bread together. And then we have a once a week um, life group or whatever. And but it's where we're not seeing like the older coming alongside the younger. And our
Yeah.
pastor's been praying for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so I'm really and we do take them a meal and all of that. So I'm grateful to hear that we're like moving in that a
Mhm.
really positive direction.
It's
I
gonna
did
take
have a
years.
question for you. Oh
Mhm.
yeah, I'm
I
Mhm.
think that's the beauty of what we're seeing with the younger families is that they're well, not all of them, but for the most part, like take them a meal, you're leading a discussion. group with ladies. My wife leads to take them a meal. It's primarily but as they become the older women, they've been doing it, and the younger women, they're able to see the struggle that they had when they were the younger women and be able to take them under their wings. So it will happen, but you've got to be farsighted. It can't be. Yeah.
Mm.
What were we gonna?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I got this question out to you because as we were like feeling this need for having women that are in like slightly older life season up further along, I just have been craving this older sister or even the grandmother that has all the experience, but particularly, so that's what I've really been getting from your podcast with Abigail. It's just like these women have so much wisdom. And I'm how do I get to that point? But also, one thing that really stood out to me, you were in an interview and you said, I did not know I had a temper until I had children. And I had been saying that for years. I did not know I had a temper for me until I got married. And then people laugh at that. I'm like, no, this isn't funny. Like I don't know what happened. This is supposed to be the most beautiful part of what I thought was supposed to be the most beautiful part of my life. And I'm angry. And then of course having children, I'm overstimulated and I'm angry. And so I was like, I've got to ask Tilly, what have you been doing? What are ways that you've encouraged your heart? And how has your husband been able to lead you along in this as well?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So the shock of being like, wow, not only do I have a temper, but there's this rage deep in my belly that I didn't even know was there. And it's this rage of like not being able to control things. Like I can't control um my husband, but especially I cannot control these toddlers. And it was when the two toddlers, when I got number two came up and I realized, oh, I have let number one set the tone for what we're doing and how we're doing it this entire time
Mhm.
because I'm flexible and she is delightful and has a strong person, has an opinion that is delightful to me. I'd love to hear it. So let's just do what she
Yeah.
wants to do. And I did
Mhm.
not set up enough of an authority, structure with her to let her know, no, we're going to do this just for practice. So that became a problem when number two came up and I realized, oh, I can't accommodate both of these toddlers. They have different opinions than each other. And now I've kind of failed to let number one know that she's not in charge. And now I've got two who both want to be in charge. So that's the kind of background I would say that set me up for just like feeling completely helpless and
Super.
angry a lot of the time. But a lot of it too was just like a baby that won't sleep. That would make me,
Oh yeah.
So part of it is just realizing, okay, this is sin that was there all along, and I'm just being squeezed real hard, and this is why I'm seeing that sin. And I would definitely go and just pray in front of the little girls, for help with mommy's temper. Pray with my husband for help with my temper. Pray at the
Mm.
beginning of the day, please help me today because I'm going to need it. And then I think there were other parts of it of just coming back and addressing some of those discipline issues that I hadn't addressed and getting some help with that. Like, I wish that I'd asked for more help, honestly, because I had a lot of pride. And because I was raised in a family that did this pretty well, I kind of came into parenting thinking, I know all this. Like, I know what to do. And yet I didn't. I could have used a lot more input. So asking, like, a lot of the anger is also fear because it's the fear of man of what are they going to think about my kids and what they're doing, or being at home and being like, what if someone were to see this? Like, just it's fear.
Yes.
So asking from like going to a mom whose kids kind of are the way you would like yours to someday be, and just saying, what would you do about this, or what could I do about this? And also, I would have asked more directly for help from Justin. I was not asking for help and trusting him to figure it out and
Mhm.
learn.
Yeah.
Because my viewpoint at that time was like, I understand all this, but he wasn't raised in the family I was, so he doesn't really know anyway. So I'll just take care of it. So that's all I can think of off
Yeah.
my head because I know that the Lord has helped me, and I can talk to my kids now and say, "Do you remember how mommy used to pray for this?" And
Mhm.
the Lord has changed me. Like it is a
Yeah.
different
Wow.
thing than it was 5 or 10
That's
years ago.
so encouraging.
Yeah.
I have tried to use those moments as opportunities to just dig in and be like, okay, mommy needs to pray about this. And I'm very thankful for the influences because I'm able to say like, and my children are keeping me straight. Like when I have gotten angry, my 3-year-old would say, Mommy, that's too loud. And I'm like, God, you are using these children to
Yeah.
just heat coals onto my head. And so I'm able to like repent and move on. But
Right.
I don't, it's just, but thank you for speaking into that. So
Mhm. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
think go ahead, Tilly.
just that the communicating to them, like, there is a standard that is higher than me, and I am
Mhm.
failing in this standard.
Yeah.
That's why I'm apologizing now, but it's the same standard I'm holding you to, and all of it is of God, you know? And also as a mom, it's hard for us to stand in our authority because we're not
Mhm.
comfortable with it, you know? It's not
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
Mhm.
natural feeling weight, but it's a God-given responsibility, and for us to say, "God has given me authority over you.
Mhm.
In obedience to God, I'm going to accept that authority and live, you know, and walk in it." Um, Even communicating that to the kids is a big deal.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Corey.
It's cool to listen to the other side of it because my concern oftentimes is, as the one who primarily does like the spanking, is you're almost always mad, at least I am as a dad, as soon as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you come here. And
Mhm.
then I'm like, oh, you cannot do that in anger. That's not something you
Right.
should ever do in anger, and you have to step back. And
Mhm.
so it's interesting to hear both sides of it, of where you all are coming from as mothers and where I'm coming from as a father, dealing with anger in different ways because we're made as different parts to a whole, and it's cool.
Um, so another question that I wanted to ask was, you and Abigail actually, I think Abigail was talking to maybe Rachel. I can't pronounce her name. I think it was that.
Mhm.
Um,
Jankovic.
and yeah, and they were talking about you are raising these children to to help their heart, not to necessarily like behavior's not your ultimate goal. And I was just like, whoa, I need someone to explain that to me because I am very much so triggered by my children's behavior.
Mhm.
And I don't, and of course I'm like, hey, the Bible says, and Rachel's like, it's not like, hey, the Bible says don't do this. It's, you want to get at their heart. And I was like, I need someone to dig into that
Right.
because I want their behavior to be an outpouring of their heart, but I don't know how to
What's the
train heart.
difference? Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it's super important to understand when you have small children, their heart and their behavior is basically the same thing. Like, there is not a lot of complication there between,
Mm-hmm.
well, what are they feeling? What are they thinking? I need to make sure I explain the gospel to them. And you do. You do explain the gospel to them, but I do think there's a huge misunderstanding with parents of young children who are looking for that heart level growth, and they're just not understanding that, like, when you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with an 18-month-old, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, 5-year-old even, like, behavior is the main battleground. Like, that is what you're mainly looking at because all they're really learning in those years is mommy and dad love me, you know, God is real and here's what he says, but also when mom and dad speak, I obey with a cheerful attitude. And it's possible for me to change my face and say, you know, like, show me a cheerful face. Like, their face, it's not complicated. Like, I think we moms especially get real worked
Yeah.
up, and there's all this stuff online too that makes it worse. But of like, what about their emotions? Like, we need to counsel them
Yeah.
through their emotions and give them
Mhm.
a lot of
Yeah.
language for their emotions. And that I would
Mhm.
say is like for later, like when they're and up to maybe 5 or so, all they really need to know is, guess what? It's possible for you to feel this way and still obey. And it's possible for you to come in and be in the middle of a stink and to turn it around. And you needed a little extra motivation in order to learn that about yourself, but they can actually learn. Like, my 2-year-old knows it's possible for me to say, to do this
Yeah.
when even I was upset, you know, 3 seconds ago. And their emotions change at the drop of a hat. Like, you don't need to have a high level of respect for their emotions at this age because it changes depending on whether they're getting what they want, basically. But then
Yeah.
later on, like, I think with Rachel and Abigail, they have children who are teens,
Right.
20, you know,
Mhm.
they're older children that you really do. You have lost it is no longer the moment for just get them to do what you want them to do, because you're moving into, let's talk about, why did you feel that way? Like someone said something to you at church and you were thinking about it. You didn't even know you were thinking about it. Like that's the level of like emotional conversation you might be having later on. Where's your
Okay.
heart in that? Why do you think you did that thing? But asking a 3-year-old, why did you do that,
Right.
is a useless question with no answer, because they don't
Yeah.
have an answer. So,
That's
does that
helpful.
make sense? Like,
Yeah, it does.
it's
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
We have a daughter, my wife and I, that's she might know where I'm going with it because you said the smile thing. She's got two parents who have to work at knowing what their facial expressions are, because we often, you might have even noticed it in this conversation, mine's pretty straight faced all the time, and so is my wife's.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
my daughter looks very mad all the time, like pretty much.
She got the
She would could
furrowed
be
brow.
she can be on top of the world and she'll stare at you like this, and we're like, say cheese.
Uh-huh,
She'll do her smile,
uh-huh,
and we'll constantly ask her, let me see your happy face,
uh-huh.
because we're literally at church and we'll look over at someone's laughing that's over next to us, and we look at her and she's just staring with her furrowed brow. And Zeke's the opposite. So he's our son, Ezekiel, is just smiles 95% of the time, laughing, and it's hilarious, the difference in the two. My
Yep.
wife sings every so often in our choir, does a solo at the church, and she has to practice in front of the mirror. She's like, I know what I'm gonna look, so I have to smile and know what I'm gonna look like on the camera, and it's hilarious. So it's cool to hear you say the let me see your happy face, because
Yeah.
we're with their family all the time, so they
Uh-huh.
constantly hear us saying that,
Yeah.
working on that with her.
Yep.
You've worked with that leads us speaking of Rachel, that leads us into the next question. You've worked with Canon Plus on at least 2 of your projects. Has it been all 3?
Well, yeah. So my first 2 books were came out with Harvest House initially, and then after Hemlock came out, I had the rights returned to me on both of those books. The Broken Bread book, they were going to lapse it, and there was like a waiting list, but they weren't going to reprint it. So I guess it just
Interesting.
didn't do well enough that they wanted to reprint it. But Canon was very kind to reprint both of those books.
Lovely.
So yes, so that's the long
Yeah.
answer. But yeah, and then the podcast moving over to being hosted with them so that we don't have to deal with the technical stuff, basically, or get
Cool.
sponsorship. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a subscriber. I really appreciate a lot of what Pastor Wilson does and the guys over there. I've interviewed him. But with that comes a lot of flack from
Uh-huh.
people who think that the women in Moscow are in cages. So have you dealt with any of that in working with them yourself? And if so, how do you navigate that when you spoke of Abigail on Twitter earlier?
Mhm.
Twitter, there is some good on Twitter, but I can't stand most of it, because that's where
Right.
most of this comes out. It
Yep.
are people who, when I was interviewing Doug, he put it this way: people who are 1,000 miles away that never met you think they know everything about you, and
Mhm.
they're a discernment blogger who's trying to speak into a situation they don't know a lot about. How
I got no
have you
time for
dealt
it.
with any? You don't deal with it at all?
No.
Like, do you get messages or anything like that because of working with them, or you don't even know? You just keep it
Yeah, well, I
shut
don't
off.
know. I wouldn't know about someone message on Twitter, but I don't really get flack. The thing is, like, it depends so much what your real life circles are, I think. And in our church context, there's no you would get more flack for, like, working with the Gospel Coalition where we are, than working with Moscow. So that's just kinda culturally where we are in our church. But it's funny because we do have a really wide net, especially between my husband and I, because he still really appreciates the work of some people that a lot of people love to hate on social media, like on the you know,
Yeah.
just hate on this person's woke or whatever. And I
Me
just feel
too.
like my
Well, Piper,
husband say what?
people say that stuff about Piper, and I'm like, are you kidding
Right,
me?
I know,
Like
I know, exactly, and you're just like, "Please, guys." But with my husband, like, I just think he's modeled it for me through the years, and just there have been moments, like there was a moment some years ago when I think he was in a conversation with the G3 organization, maybe about writing for them or something. And they basically had a policy of like, you have to never, ever write with the Gospel Coalition ever again in order to write with this group. And
Wow.
he was just like, no, like, I just don't, it's not, he wasn't even writing for TGC at that moment. It was just this policy for him of like, that's not how I operate. Like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
just say this group is anathema, and there's no good that they're doing at all because I disagree with things that they've put out or whatever. So I just think
Yes.
he's modeled for me this idea of like, we have benefited so much from so many different ministries and been so
Sure.
blessed. And I've been so personally blessed by Moscow. And
Mhm.
talking about the women, like the women have been the ones I've probably benefited from the most, like listening to their podcast in years past
Yeah.
and reading their books and just being like, if this is the fruit among the women of this community, the men are obviously they're doing something right because the women
Yeah.
here are super healthy. So like that's one of the things I often look at with a ministry is like, how are the women doing in this ministry?
Yeah.
Because if they're happy and healthy on this level, then something is going right here.
Yeah.
But anyway, but just the idea that you can benefit from and even speak well of like as a Christian speaks of another Christian, of so many different types of ministries, because I do think we need all sorts and
Yeah.
they all
Amen.
kind of serve a different function on the Christian landscape. And I'm grateful for so many of them, in different ways. So yeah, I just am like, it's such a no brainer for me. I don't understand this cancellation thing of like, well,
Yeah.
they allowed this thing, or they said this thing years ago and I could never touch them again,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so.
I'm glad you said that. There was a interview where Jonathan Lehman was interviewing Mark Dever, and he said something about how he was like, the old T4G conference, there's a lot of talk on Twitter about your breakup with all these people and where you're at now with them. So how do you feel about that? And he's like, what? Like, what are
What
you
break?
talking about? I'm good friends with Piper, and because he's not on there looking at all the
Right,
trolls that are
right, right.
saying all the things. He's like, people think
Yeah.
we had a breakup, like just because we're not, and they're like, yeah, and so I heard that and was like, oh, it can be that way. You don't have to get
Yeah.
caught up in all of this
Especially if you
ridiculousness,
stay off or don't live your life online and call
right?
Yeah.
people personally. Like,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Justin was just telling me a story. I think it was Dever. I think it was Dever and MacArthur maybe,
Hmm.
where there was some dust up online where they were saying these guys are on the outs, and they would just call each other periodically just to be like,
Hmm.
"We good? Okay, we're
Yeah.
good." And just
Awesome.
it's like that's what real relationships are actually like. And
Yeah. Amen.
like Matthew 18, it's given us sort of a template for things like this. If you have a real issue
Hmm.
with something someone's doing or saying, it is hard though because I've been thinking about this. Like, can you Matthew 18 an organization? And it's like it makes it much more complicated when you have a bunch of moving parts. But there are individuals inside that organization, and they're either being faithful or they're being unfaithful, and they're saying something that's not true. But
Mhm.
you can still address people on the individual level, I think. And that's what
Mhm.
my husband does. Like, he's emailing people personally inside of organizations to be like, wow, how did that happen?
Mhm. One of our pastors says, "What did they say about that when you talk to them about it?" That's if
Mhm.
someone comes to him and says something about, it's
Yeah.
Pastor Andy, will say, "Well, what did they say when you said something to them about it?" And I did have a close friend who really didn't know a lot about Moscow. All he had seen are 30-second clips, and he was talking about how they were misogynistic and all these different things. And I was like, "You ever like listen to their women and the wives and the daughters and seeing how nope." It's like, well, and then
Yeah.
I messaged Rachel and was like, "Hey, can I get you an interview to talk about these things?" And
Nice.
she said, "Yeah, as long as timing is right." And
Mhm.
I love how well Doug has discipled them, because at the end of my episode with him, I asked, if I could get someone to debate you, would you do it? And he said, if I think his exact words were something to the degree of, if the timing is right, I'm all about it in theory. And when I messaged Rachel, she responded, if the timing is right, I'm all about it in theory. And I was like, your dad has had a huge impact on your
Oh,
life. That
that's
was
weird.
really cool.
That's that's a nice line. I'm all about it in theory because it does. It's like it's non-committal, but but also lets you know it's not about you. It's just about, how much time there is. So that's great.
Right. So biblical womanhood, especially motherhood, is often degenerated in our culture. Where do you start with young women who've never been taught to value womanhood, motherhood, who are taught by the culture that the best thing to do at a high school reunion is show up in your pantsuit and have made a whole bunch of money? How would you start discipling a younger woman who has come out of that mindset?
Yeah. So most of the friends that I had in college were more like that. Just had extremely strong, clear ideas of what their careers were going to be, and they were pretty high level careers. Doctors and lab. You know, um, people who work in a lab. I don't even know what that's called. um, College professors. Amongst my friends, like those are the kinds of careers that they have now, and I was that one girl who was just kind of like, I kind of want to write, and
Mhm.
I want to get married and have children and homeschool them. Um, so it is funny, like just how what your sort of dream was when you were young affects so much your happiness, I guess, later on in where you end up. But I think the biggest thing we have now is just to display the loveliness of the woman who has taken her calling at home seriously and loved it. A woman
Mm.
who
Yeah.
has loved it. And
Mhm.
that is beautiful and lovely.
Mhm.
I've really enjoyed hearing random clips of Erica Kirk talking about how,
Mhm.
being a wife and a mother is this high calling because it's not something you're used to hearing on a
Right.
wider scale. But I guess and also giving them just verbally, even giving them permission like, I'm hearing a lot of stories from some of the men in my life, brothers-in-law, my husband's friends who work at these big corporations with a lot of women, and hear from the women all the time, like, "I just wish I wish I could be home with the kids,
Mhm.
today. I wish
Yeah.
I'm just
Mhm.
struggling so much with having to
Wow.
be here." And
Mhm.
just to kind of as a woman who has always been at home, not to not to assume not to assume inferiority for sure, but also, like, don't assume that these women are just, um, settled and happy where they are. Like, there may be a really big piece of them that's like, "Oh, man, I would love to
Yeah.
be home," and it's
Please
just
go.
not clicking for me that that might actually be possible. Like, maybe
Mhm.
I don't need to have this size house. Maybe we could have a smaller house and I could be
Mhm.
home, or
Yeah.
maybe our kids, could be homeschooled instead of going to the private
Mhm.
school or whatever it is, like
Mhm.
just lifestyle could maybe accommodate me being at home if we made that decision. And just
Mhm.
recognizing that there are probably a lot of women who want that and just it hasn't clicked for them of like, you're allowed to do that. Like, I think
Mhm.
that's the
Yeah.
cultural moment that we're really in. I think we're
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
in this moment of the tide kind of turning and women starting to recognize, like, I have been sold a
Yes.
false promise here
Cheapened.
that I can have it
Yep.
all, and I really cannot because I am missing some really crucial moments.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry. My grandmother, and my mother, um, they a police officer, and then my mom's a doctor.
Mhm.
And at my baby shower, my grandmother was like, "Are all of your friends stay-at-home moms?" And I was like, "Yeah." I mean, it just worked itself out that way. And she was like, "They're happy." I was like, "Yeah." I mean, it's hard, but yeah, they're happy. And then she was like, "We worked so hard to get out of the home, and they're all coming back to the home." And my mom, who career doctor, she was like, "I think we were lied to." And it was just this
Wow.
moment of, like, I I think being a stay-at-home mom is, like, it's very difficult. It's not just it's very hard to be around toddlers and around,
Yeah,
demanding children. It's not like this picture perfect, which I had, those lenses, and it was very the rude awakening of, "No, no, this is like you're getting you're rolling your sleeves up, and it is very difficult,
right,
but I wanna be the one doing it. I don't want anyone else doing this
right,
work." And that has been a beautiful overflow of the decision my husband and I made all those years ago.
right.
And, yeah, but they were like, we were lied to. And I was just like, wow.
I like
That's
what you said
big.
about sacrifice too, because that's the one thing. Like you're making a sacrifice either way. I think that's what people don't recognize is if you're if you both need to work, need to, you're making what I would consider to be a much higher sacrifice in the
Mhm.
long run, not in the good sense,
Right.
if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
Because but when people realize it's possible because other faithful people who've come to the conviction and have had people lead them through it have set the example, it changes. I think that's the only reason, well, part of the only reason we have so many. We have a co-op at the church, classical co-op for the kids, and none of those moms, they're all stay-at-home moms and do a wonderful job at that. And I think there were a few people that have set that example now. And at our small group, we have some people that come from other churches that have a much different culture too. And we went through Joel Beakey's discipling your kids through sermons. And they're like, we had mothers asking, so is it bad if we send our kids to church for kids? Like just questions like that. And to be able to gracefully walk them through, because they want to hear, am I sinning or am I not sinning? But being able to gracefully
Mhm.
walk
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
through. And then they're like, how do your kids love church as much as they do? And different things like that. And they're starting to see that the sacrifice is a sacrifice of having a smaller house, of, potentially the husband working 2 jobs, a job and a half or something like that, resulting in so much more beauty and fruit and good. And it is hard, I think, to walk through that without also making someone feel like you're hitting them over the head with a hammer too.
Right.
Because you don't want to do that. You don't want to crush the little spark that's there. Um, we have the speed round. Are you ready for the speed round? Or do you have time for that? I
I
think we said
do.
stop was at 8:30. It's 8:30.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
so
I'm
many more
good.
questions. Oh my goodness. I would
Oh,
have flew.
Tilly, if we're thinking of eventually hosting, we're not thinking, we're going to do it, eventually hosting a conference in the Valley. And we think part of shaping that culture is having someone come in eventually. So anyway, I don't want you to have to answer that, but we may be reaching out to you eventually to come speak to women about a Titus 2 model, if that's something you're open to. So I just
Okay. We
wanted
can
to
talk about that.
plant that bug in your ear. All right, speed round. Shout out. I always give to Sean DeMars. This is one of my favorite segments of his interviews, and so we're gonna copy him and do a speed round. Tilly's already done this once with him, so but we didn't do
Twice,
the same.
actually.
Oh, twice.
No, that's
Oh,
not true. We brought Justin to do it the second time I was with him.
okay. I did
Yeah.
see where I thought there was a new thumbnail that wasn't the episode I'd seen with you before. I gotta watch that one. All right, you ready?
Ready.
Do you prefer country or the city for living?
Country.
Mountains or beach vacation?
Mountains.
Kindle or paperback book?
Paperback.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
What's your favorite worship song?
The kids just asked me yesterday, and I think I still love Be Thou My Vision.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Keep your kids in the worship service, or do they go to a kids' time?
They're in the worship service. We don't have a kids' time, actually. The 2-year-olds sometimes will go to nursery, though.
Yeah, we do that as well. C.S. Lewis or Jane Austen?
That's hard, but Lewis.
What's your favorite thing about small town Tennessee?
Not being in the city.
Me too. That's my favorite thing about small town Virginia. If you could only keep one, sourdough or cast iron?
Sourdough.
If you had to summarize all 3 of your books in one meal, what would be on the plate?
Oh, wow. Oh, man, that's such a crazy question.
I thought I read
I
it
don't
wrong
know.
when you
Like,
sent me.
s
So
like
you've got Envy, Broken Bread, and My Dear Hemlock.
yeah, I mean, I guess it would just be a plate that has all the different food groups on it. It'd have, like, steak and potatoes and sourdough and salad.
Yeah. I have to
Yep.
think of, in all 3 of them, just based on the title, I think of autumn for some reason, and so I think of, like, those fall foods.
Soup.
Oh, yeah.
Like a soup or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we've been
yeah,
getting into pumpkin soup the last couple weeks
Oh yeah.
because we
Oh, yeah.
can.
there you go. I'm a I said this before we were recording, I think before you got on here too, and I was really hoping you wouldn't hop in before then. But James was on the phone with me asking what I wanted in the coffee, and I was like, "Dave, you got the pumpkin spice down there."
You're like, is a
From
man
your brain.
allowed to have
I
pumpkin
don't think
spice?
so, and I actually just said it in a recording, so I'm gonna lose some reforms points for that. He's like, "You want it black?" I was like, "No, we're not recording yet. No."
So I have a couple rapid fire. What is your favorite fiction book?
I really love Middlemarch. I really love Middlemarch. There's several portraits of wives in the positive and negative, like in that book, that I have found very instructive. So I really love that book.
Cool. What book besides the Bible should every woman read? And this can be like spiritual building or
Yeah. Oh man. I
You can
always
shout
thought. I
yourself
always.
out right.
What'd you say?
I said you can shout yourself out right now. Oh, my dick.
Sorry, I gotta go. Oh yeah, everyone should read my Dear Hemlock. Oh my goodness, no. Paralandra is that of the
yeah.
space trilogy.
Just
You
read it.
know, I
Mhm.
always feel like this is a book for women, and I know it's not,
Yeah,
but I
Jane
always
Suttles
feel
is
like this is a
incredible.
book for women because it's like
Mhm.
such a. I'd never read a portrait like that of like feminine glory, like what
Mhm.
feminine glory looks like.
Mhm.
And just yeah, there's a lot of things in there just about even like resistance to Satan's devices on women that I just
Mhm.
love. So
Yeah.
I like that book.
I just read that
Yeah.
couple weeks ago.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it was a lot. I did not know C.S. Lewis could write gory, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh."
Oh, gory.
Um,
Yeah.
yes, like the third book especially.
Yeah, right.
What homeschool curriculum do you use?
Well, kind of eclectic.
Mhm.
The homeschooling that I was put through was like this, or we would just use a lot of books. I think I've been very influenced the last few years by Charlotte Mason. We have a lot of people who are classical as well in our community, and I keep telling both of these groups that they have so much in common and there's so much overlap, and they both keep telling me, "No, we're nothing like Charlotte Mason. No, we're nothing like classical." And I just keep being like, "Guys, old books, like all great
Yes,
old books,
you
like
what?
that is." Yeah, that's the
Mhm.
centerpiece of both of these philosophies. So
Mhm.
anyway, but to me, it's about the books.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
thing I'm having to learn is having a schedule. So, like, having a really tight, schedule to make sure we get in all the books that we wanna get in. So, yeah.
Last question, and then we're good. What is your favorite chicken's name?
Um, well,
Pride.
uh, one of one of our chickens this past year was named, Lucy Peckinsey. And, yeah, but the problem is we lost her because she looked exactly like all the other chickens. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
She's in there somewhere. How many holes are in a straw?
Can't take me in with that one again.
So Al Mohler answered that one the best. I thought that was
What did he
hilarious.
say? What did he say? I
He
don't remember.
said there are no holes in a straw. It would be faulty if there are holes in a straw. Because if
Yeah,
you know how if you have a hole in your
right.
straw,
It's a tube, it's not really a hole.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was hilarious. So, Tilly, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate you taking the time. Where can people find you if they want to stay up to date on your next project? If they want to purchase your books, what's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, well, you can go find Homefires. I usually talk about
Mhm.
stuff that I'm doing on there, and you can friend me on Facebook. I still keep up with Facebook,
Mhm.
and I've let Instagram kinda lapse the last several years, so, you won't see any new stuff on there right now, but yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day. And
Yes.
I hope this didn't tire you out too much for those kiddos.
To have to go to school now.
Yep, that's right.
Have a good one.
God bless. Thank you, Tilly.
Bye.